which were just the maps of the outer domains. That was before we ever learned about the middle domains, the inner domains, and the core domains. But they are all built on the configurations of a very specific Cathara grid that holds the mathematics and the creation imprint of what is called the KRYST code. And that is, when we use the word KRYST, it is coming from understanding that original first creation mechanics that allows for natural perpetual motion and eternal life cycles as opposed to finite life cycles. So we're not just referring to Christian or Bible. In fact, the Bible has very little to do with any of the original Christic teachings, and that is really, really sad, because certain parts of them were taken, and at this point most of them have been edited out and they've turned it into a control dogma. The same has happened with the Quran, the same has happened with the Buddhist text, the same has happened with every religion on this planet. Originally we all had one religion. The religion was about understanding the original legion of the Christ, the original eternal life cycle we were all a part of. And when we talk about Cathara grids, you can find a mutated version of this in the Kabbalistic teachings. All right, I forget which book it is, but I think it's the Kabbalah directly. So there are pieces of this that have come up from the Atlantean times when we had a record wipe. I mean, this place was swept where there were no more of the Mahabharata texts left. The Mahabharata texts were the written versions of this information that was alive, even still, and physical in Atlantis. Those texts were destroyed. So for people who were just coming into this work, this is huge. There's a huge spectrum to this. We are not just one little religious perspective, among a billion different ones. We represent the original perspective out of which the others fragmented. And if anybody has a problem with that, if people out there that are very devout in their religions, we always say everyone is welcome, because every religion originally came from this understanding of the cosmos and your eternal life nature. So whatever your affiliation, you're welcome here, and there is a place where one good question is, whatever your books may be that you find sacred, where did they come from? Do you really think God came down, sat down with a pen and wrote them? They came through people translating information, all right, all along, every one of them. You could say every one of them were channeled, and it depends on whether that channel was clear or not as to how clear the information was given. So we do represent a unified cosmological perspective that embraces both science and spirituality, where they're shown as a coherent force of eternal life creation. In that eternal life creation, ascension is a reality, not just a false promise that's made to a bunch of people who will follow this or that. All right, we show you what it is about. We show you it has to do with Stargate passage, which has to do with DNA capacities once you are in a manifest form. What we are working on now is all based on the KRYST code, which is based on the Cathara grid. And what we are doing are opening the ascension passages that are still available on this planet. And it's really, really exciting at this point to be a part of the work, because it's getting very close now. It's not the maps that go all the way up and out to the cosmos, because we had those too with the echo maps of the God World gates. It took you so far out as far as understanding your 15-dimensional matrix and its main 12 stargates, and how that connected to a whole bunch of others that you felt like kind of like a little piece of sand on a beach someplace, that the cosmos was so large that even the thought of ascending home seems so far away you could hardly even conceptualize it. Now, the first step toward home is being able to move between Earth and Eartha. And from Eartha, the passage opens to Sirius B, which is another Lone Star fall host system, because this whole Ekaveka is falling. But there are host systems like Earth is going through. We will eventually be able to get out into the Aquarian matrix, and you'll see where that is in a minute. So I just wanted to remind you of the Cathara grid, the KRYST code structure, and the fact that all of the maps are built on that. Whether they're maps that have their 3D pretty hologram put on them, like the maps that are in color that you have there, or whether you're looking at the bones of those maps, which are the Cathara grids, or the balls, which are the spheres that form upon the Cathara grids. So we will get into structure more heavily later. I just want to get you to the point where we play with the vertical maps a bit, because then you'll understand when we go to Cusco tomorrow a bit of what we're a part of there, what we're participating in there, and we'll take it from there at some point into a really quick course in Rochelle body anatomy and how that applies to these maps. So you will see the product of Rochelle body anatomy and first creation physics when you see the vertical maps. Before you see the vertical maps, you will see the circular maps, which are spherical maps that show you the different layers and planes that exist within the Earth's body and within Earth's body and how they interface with each other. And that's when you find out where platforms are, where gates are, and where you can move your consciousness first and then eventually your body once you reverse mutate the gene code from the mutations that have been done here, where there is still actually the possibility of getting a body through slide which goes into the aurora fields, which are still fully hosted, and a few people may actually be able to reverse mutate sufficiently within enough time to reach the 2047 deadline when Eartha starfires. Some people will actually go out with Eartha. They will choose to leave, and they will take their bodies out through and go to Eartha, and they will starfire in with Eartha. But most people on this planet won't. There is a whole bunch of the Indigo team that is needed, particularly the Query Indigo team, to hold the host here and to hold the gates open. So there will be generations that follow us long after we leave, whether we take our bodies or not, that will, at least for 500 to 1,000 years, hold these gates open that we are opening now in order to allow the potential for evolution. This is looking at the same thing, just larger, so we can see a little bit of the detail of the bones better. We're again looking at the bones, and the bones, when we're talking about the maps, are actually stargates. Each Cathara grid has 12 Cathara centers, and when we're dealing with the larger Templar structures of the cosmos, they are stargates. So there are 12, sets of 12 stargates. So all of these little large balls are 12 stargates, main stargates of the Akasha Aya. These are the Akasha A systems, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And this is our Akasha A here. And I believe it's tilted at a little bit different angle, and it's hard for me to have to read them. Can we pull this up a little bit, honey, please? Thank you. All right. Down here, we have our Akasha A, and our Akasha, and our Veka system, and our parallel Veka. All right, so that's the PCM and the PKA of our Veka systems within our Akasha, within our Akasha A. Our parallel, which would be at 90 degrees to us, our parallel Akasha would be this one. Our parallel Akasha's Ekaveka system is the system that was the Borgia matrix. It was called the, what was it called? Barenthsalis, I believe? It was, the Barenthsala, were the original Christic Eka level races that were seeded into that system. And we won't go through why. We've covered this in a couple other things of how they got into creating something called the victim-victimizer game in order to try to solve certain problems involving why the potentiality of fall existed within the CRYST program. And in doing so, they fell themselves very badly and became something that chose to use full-on anti-Christic things, eating other things in order to sustain itself, because they wanted to prove that God was wrong, and they wanted to prove that they would be better at running the entire creation than Source ever was. And they had very twisted thinking by the time that they fell. They are still in existence, but they are our parallel Akasha. They represent our parallel Akasha. So we are neighbors in our Akasha A. Because they fell, not only their Vekas fell, but their core Eka fell. Before it fell, it plugged in to our Eka because we were close, and because our Eka was the parallel. Because we're parallels in the Akasha level, they were able to use that parallel Akasha connection to create a time rip into our Eka. Now, over here, in this adjacent Akasha A, we have the Wisale matrix. That's the one that had the Wisadek and the Wisadrak Vekas fallen. These are considered in the adjacent matrix. It's always been referred to as the adjacent matrix. It's the adjacent Akasha A, and they have a parallel. All right, this is their Akasha. This is their Akasha A, the adjacent Akasha A to ours, and this is their Akasha. And their Akasha hasn't fallen, but two of their Veka systems have fallen, the Wisadek and the Wisadrak. The Wisale matrix still has its core that is viable. It is still Christic, and it is rehabilitating, so it is not a fully fallen matrix. Only these two parts of it are. Over here, the parallel to the Wisale, which is the Wisale is the adjacent matrix, so this is the parallel adjacent matrix. This is the Aquarian matrix. All right, Aquarian matrix. The outer domains are referred to as the Aquarian level. The Aqueous are their, I believe, their Middle Eden hub levels, because each level has a hub. Then, as we go deeper, their inner hub levels are, I believe, the here we go again, Anshatasha, yeah, I can never pronounce this word when I'm tired. Anschathesia, right? So when we hear words like the Anschathesia, I can't say it again, Anschathesia passage, let's just leave it at that. The spell, you'll see the spelling at some point. But that we're referring to the like inner hub domain level of this particular matrix. There's nothing fallen in this matrix. They hold full-on crystic status, and they have no fallen parts to them. It is the combination of frequencies, or crystal spirals, natural crystal spirals, from the Aquarian matrix, from the still viable crystic portions of the Weaselay matrix, and from the Adore side, which is kind of like that we didn't even get into the Adores when we were doing these maps yet, but if we are the Attore side, there is a going in counter spin, our twin, and it's a different type of twin than a parallel would be, but it's in the same place as we are. So we are the Attore side of this matrix, and we have a complement twin that is the Adore side. So the Adore side is not fully falling. They have crystic potential. So we have the three matrices here running. They formed what was called the Crystal River Cooperative, and it was run by the ones who had not fallen at all. They were close enough to help, but they were far enough away to not get dragged in to the fall of the Borgia matrix. So it is from this matrix, and the Adore side of our matrix that we are running the Crystal River spiral, and the other currents that will come through. There's a current coming through that has been anchored here from their I believe, their outer domains. It was called the what was that called? The Arc of Aquarii. All right, that came from their outer domains. And recently, we've anchored the Anschathesia passage there. I said it right that time. That comes from the inner hubs of this matrix and has anchored into our matrix and into our Earth. This is the lifeline that is coming in directly, and they actually come in. The Anschathesia passage comes in from their hubs through our hubs, which are fine, and out into our outer domains, through our Edens and into our outer domains. So there's a lot of help that we're getting in this drama down here, but it is a very large drama. A drama that involves not just little Vecca systems, but entire Akasha and Akasha A systems. It is quite a large drama. It's been going on for 480 through 450 billion years, because that is when our parallel Akashas Eka Vecca, the Borgia matrix, fell. So just wanted you to see the basic relationships in the cosmological maps to where we are positioned and where our little Vecca system is, and we're like way down here in the density 1 level of our Vecca system, and where these other are located. So there's the Borgia matrix, there's the Aquarian matrix, and there's the Weaselay matrix. And these three, our Adore side, still have crystic potential and are running their crystal spirals to hold the host. The lifeline, we've talked about it being almost like a respirator tube at this point that is holding Earth's core prana seed from compaction, is coming directly from the hubs of this matrix and down, and it's literally like a respirator that breathes life force in and allows the things that, if it were lungs we were talking about and not a planetary Templar, it allows the energy to keep circulating, just like a respirator would allow the lungs to keep moving oxygen and to keep breathing. So right now that is the status that Earth is in, and it's doing a lot better than the Sun, because the Sun has undergone the core compaction of its prana seed, which means it has entered Bardo. And normally, as I said before, a planet, any of the planets that are orbiting around a sun, if the sun enters Bardo, the entire solar system will enter Bardo. And eventually, at the end of a Bardo system, or a Bardo cycle, there is what is called the nova cycle. And that is where it implodes and then explodes and goes back to space dust return. All right, we're not looking at that right now, and we wouldn't have been for about 3 billion years until they fully compacted and started the Bardo cycle on the sun. It was frequencies being blasted in from here, the Borgia matrix, that did indeed compact the core gates in our sun. So they have been sending psychotronics, or scalar wave blasts of frequency, just like we anchor crystic pillars of energy. Well, they can anchor all sorts of reverse spin, twisted coded frequencies from their fallen matrix. They created what is called the Borgia time rip triangulation. They created one time rip and energy blast line that went from their matrix to the fallen Weasadrak matrix in the Weaselay matrix. And then they created another one down through Bellatrix in our system and to enter our system, and then they connected them through what is called the Iumbi lock in our universal, in our Vector's universal stargate. So there is a triangulation running this way, by which some very nasty, and again, they have the power of 3 fallen matrices, currents, that they have been using to cause, to really cause harm here. What their objective has been was to harness this, make it fall, harness that, make it fall, and drag it in. And just because the Aquarian really annoy them, because they're always getting in the way of them succeeding in eating all of creation or assimilating it. The Borgia are known as the assimilators because they want to assimilate everything into their matrix. In other words, eat it in order to sustain and hold off the point at which they would hit space dust return, which they would hit natural Bardo. So we are dealing with a triangulation of reverse spin currents that are not as strong as the 3 crystic currents, because the reverse spin currents are never as strong as the original eternal life currents, but they can still pack a wallop, and they can overwhelm smaller systems, even if the smaller systems are running Christ or partial Christ. So the Aquarian matrix got directly involved in this drama when the Borgia got directly involved and activated their triangulation, and that was recently. I forget when it was, like the end of last year, I think it was 2006. I have that written down someplace as far as when they began opening the triangulation, working with the Thetans. There's something called the threshold grid that was put in our system a long time ago by the Thetans and a group of fallen Lyrans and the Borgia that was meant to run the triangulation, and it has been dormant for a very long time. In the last 2 years, the threshold has been activated by the Thetans, and the Borgia have opened their triangulation in order to finish the kill, basically, is what they were aiming to do. And that is why the Aquarian matrix and the Eartha races got involved, let their presence be known, brought the information back here about the fact that we are a hosting planet inside of a larger star that's going to starfire, which is a good thing, that they had to reveal, because if they didn't assist us directly, and if there was no one here on surface to understand what was happening, there'd be nobody to open the gates, and there would be nothing that they could do if they just tried to bring in the